Um, Good evening, welcome. We're expecting all attendees joining us in a minute. So by the way, I thank you again being with us. This is a good chance for us to host you here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
They're coming. So, so in a minute we can start. I should say that the registrations is much more than our usual records. So you are very popular.
I don't think so. That's good.
No, just believe me. So I think we can start. Thank you, Mr. Laurent. Welcome again. And this is very important for us to host you here. And for the guests, let me introduce Mr. Laurent. He is the Senior VP of BASF. And I'm not going to talk too much. And I just want him to introduce himself very briefly. Then we have lots of stuff to talk today. And then let's start then. So welcome again. So could you please introduce us very briefly, Mr. Laurent?
Yes, with pleasure. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm really honored and pleased that you're having me tonight. So Laurent Tainturier, I've been now with regards to my career, 28 years with BASF. Before this, I worked for a few years for another multinational company, and then for a very small company. I spent 4 years in a kind of a startup company. In fact, we were 5, and we started from scratch. And I remember this experience to be absolutely fascinating, and I learned a lot which I could use.
Here you are. You are mute now.
I think we lost the line and we are back now.
Yes, you're back now. That's the Murphy rule, sir. You have lots of calls today, having 0 problem.
That's it.
That's okay. That's okay. The bad thing is maybe they cannot hear you. So I just want you to repeat briefly.
Yes, of course. So I've been now 28 years with my actual company, BASF. We say BASF in Turkey. Before that, I spent a few years in another multinational company, and then between the 2 big ones in the startup company, which we really started from scratch. And that was a very important experience, I have to say, in my life. Because there's nobody to help you. You've got really to get your hands dirty, to go to the front line and get the business. You're asking yourself every evening, did I earn my money today? Because if what I don't earn, the company cannot pay to me at the end of the month. And that's something where I really learned a lot for the rest of my career. Starting with BASF in France, I have a sales and marketing background. I started as a salesperson and then sales manager. And then I had the great opportunity with this company out of the 28 years I spent with it to have the last 20 years, in fact, in positions abroad, in Turkey, in Canada, in Germany, and also with a lot of shorter missions in other countries. And I must say that's something that was really very interesting for me. Sales management, business management, general management. In a nutshell.
Well, so I think it is much easier to adapt new stuff after that 28 years. But today we're talking about something different, a new normal, etc. So could you please, from your perspective, can you define what is the new normal, if you have seen any new normal, by the way?
I've seen a new normal, yes. I don't know if it's already a normal, but I've seen like everyone around, I've seen a lot of new things. I think if we look at it from a business and a professional point of view, The new normal, this is remote working. This is no office. This is no travels. This is no meetings. But this is as much interaction as before, but through virtual means, digital means, and that's obviously a huge change that we are confronted with now, given the circumstances of this pandemic crisis. And I would also add, it has somehow changed in a way the relation between the employer, the company, and the employees, because for the last months, we have never been caring so much for, guys, how are you doing? Is it okay? Can you do your job? How are the conditions at home? Do you have all the equipment you require? And even more importantly, the health and safety of our employees have become much more important. It's very interesting to see that, in fact, we are almost every week, we have the crisis management team, and we are asking, how is it going in this country, in that country? And are people happy? Do we have new cases of COVID and so on? And so we provide recommendations. We involve in the life of our colleagues like we never did before. In fact, we provide equipment and so on. And I find it interesting because at least in the company I'm working in, we always care for the working conditions, for the working environment in the offices. But now it has taken really proportions which are very impressive. And I have to say also at the end of the day, very, very positive also.
Mm-hmm. I know that you are responsible for several countries. So we are living different phases of the new normal. So do you think we are in the new normal, or we are in the transition to a new normal? I mean, in Turkey or in other countries? What do you think?
Well, I think that in some aspects, the transition to the new normal is very advanced. And I especially think of the technical part of things. I think we were all amazed by the agility and speed at which our IT colleagues could make it happen, that all of us, we can work from home, which is just for my region, thousands of people. And for all of the BASF group in the world, that's even much more than this. And it worked within days. And you know, that can be also always very, very challenging. And a lot of tools, apps, and so on have been developed or have been at least introduced so that we can also continue to work. And in this regard, I was amazed by how fast it happened. On the other hand, I think in certain aspects, the transition is still on its way. My first comment would be, I was also amazed by how fast all of our colleagues, thousands of colleagues, could adapt to the new situation, because nearly overnight, we just told them from tomorrow morning, you work from home. And that's a huge change, in fact, in the professional life and in the private life, in the daily life. And all in all, colleagues adapted to that in an incredible way. But I also realized we were asking the employees 1 month after, 2 months after, and so on, how is it going? And most often the answer was, you know, we keep doing the job and the business, we do our best, but we are exhausted. And I think in this regard, we are still somewhere on the way, because we also have to learn many new ways of doing things. I must say myself, in the very first week, I was surrounded with video calls, and we had more meetings than ever, because we needed also to somehow to come together, to align, to make sure we are making right decisions, we are taking the right action. And that's things that are very fluent in a normal working environment. When you start being in such a totally different one, you at the beginning you look for the adjustment. So I think that in this regard we still have to learn. The good thing, if I look at the employees in my region, nearly 70% of them are telling us, you know, we are keen to continue on this mobile working format. We may have some accommodations of it. We may find a balance between coming together as teams in person in the office and all safety and health precautions, obviously. But for the biggest part of it, we are ready to continue to work, so to say, digital. And that's obviously something which is very encouraging. But we still need to learn. As a concrete example, I can just say last week we had our leadership team meeting for my region, which put people around the virtual table from Russia to South Africa, going through all Middle East countries and so on, and obviously Turkey. And we realized it was a good meeting, I would say. I hope my colleagues share my view on that. I think so. On the other hand, we also realized this is a second virtual leadership team meeting we are doing, and there is an evolution because the way you manage time is not the same. The way you make sure that people are participating is not the same. And this is impacting our agenda. And we have started to work on it. We are taking feedback. We are sending a request for feedback to all the participants. And we realize probably some topics, you need to put them bigger on the agenda and book more time for them in order to allow in this format to have a real interaction and a real discussion. And some of the topics, perhaps we have to find other ways to communicate out of the meeting, or perhaps to have a part of the meeting which is more of purely informative. What I mean with that is that really we are still finding a more sustainable way to work into these transition times. So technology is impressive, it's great, but as you know, it's always easier to launch a new software than to change the culture or the ways of doing of people. We are all like this. And so I think that's what I observed so far in this period of time.
Yeah, your pandemic has a huge impact on our lives. Personally, what do you feel about that uncertainty? Because it is not very easy for us to manage our lives. Yes, we are focusing on our business to manage our job, whatever, but on the other hand, we are living in an uncertain world. So how do you feel living such an uncertainty period?
Well, I mean, like everyone, the pandemic is a drama. We know people are suffering, people are dying, etc. I don't speak about this. If I look at my very small sphere of the professional life, I have to say I feel very good. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not disappointing you, but I feel very good. There is change, and there is change we have no choice. So we have to be inventive. We have to challenge ourselves. And in fact, this is also in this period that we can really make a difference. And I think if we go into routine times where not a lot is changing, I'm afraid I would also lose some energy, some interest, and some motivation. So in fact, despite all the difficulties, I think I like these times very much.
Right. So, so you're responsible of a huge geographical area, and it is not, I think, to be a business leader such an area in this time period. So, how can you manage to adapt all the people to this new era?
Well, I think the statement, it must not be easy to manage such a big region and such a diverse region. I would almost answer yes and no. No, it's not easy because what we noticed at the beginning of the crisis was it was more of a struggle, and it took more time in certain countries for the authorities to react to the crisis and to have a proper crisis management. And some countries, we have to be aware, their infrastructures are not the same, public health system and so on. This is one thing. So it was a lot of worry for us. And also, some of these economies have been very, very strongly impacted by the lockdowns and all these measures, perhaps even more in some cases than in more mature markets. So in that regard, that was not easy to manage. But if we are fair, I think in certain aspects to manage emerging markets in such a situation is also not so difficult because we are totally used to high volatility and full instability. And if you know the region I am working in, there is not 1 year without a crisis here or a crisis there, and devaluation, and almost state of war or a political disturbance and so on. So we are used to those kind of situations. And I have to say, the teams we have in the country, that's very hungry people. I always tend to say that's really the hunting spirit versus farming spirit, meaning we are used to react to things. And I have to say, I mentioned at the beginning, I really admired a lot the capability of the colleagues in all the country, from Vladivostok to Cape Town, all the region, how they reacted, and with which energy and with which will to overcome the situation. And that really deserves to be mentioned, because we also have to think that's nice, remote working and the Zoom and other tools like that. Very nice, very easy to say. Some people are back home in a small flat. The two are here, wife and husband. The children are not at school because the schools are closed. And we just have to figure out what it means. And I mean, people have been overcoming all of these difficulties very, very well. And so I think at the end of the day, it's difficult for all of us, that kind of crisis that's confronting us with unexpected challenges. But on the other hand, I would not say it's more difficult in such a region. At the end of the day, it's very impressive what they have been achieving, what we've been achieving. On a personal touch, I would say what is a big pain for me is that obviously I cannot travel. And normally travels are 85% of my job, and not possible anymore. And so meeting with the management and so on by virtual means is okay, but being together with the teams, going to the office, going to the customers and meeting the people who are not in the leadership team calls and things like that, that's super important, and I'm missing it a lot. But I mean, for the rest, it's a non-easy region to manage. Anyways, that's also the region of growth, but that's a growth like this, and it's chaotic, and I think we're well equipped for that.
Well, so what I understand is you feel luckier than your colleagues managing such stable or developed countries or regions. Am I right?
I think somehow it can be, because if I may say so, there is everything that the company is doing for our people is perceived, I think, as something positive if we give a recommendation on something or whatever. And what I see, which is even debate in the societies in, for instance, Western European countries, is okay, do we wear the mask? Don't we wear the mask? Why are they shutting the cafe in the evening? It's touching on individual freedom and things like that. And these are, I'm not at all saying that's inappropriate debates. I just say that things that are not really happening in our countries. And so in that sense, in fact, it is also less challenging, I would say. Yeah,
yes. So when we come to the business again, that we all know that a lot of companies have their business transformation plans and strategies for the future. But the future is not the future that they are expecting. So now we are talking about a future less predictable and possibly not stable. So what is your strategic approach to manage the business transformation in this new normal era?
Well, I'm just wondering, is the future now less predictable than it has been if you look into the past 1 or 2 decades? I'm not very sure. I think the world has become less predictable, that's for sure. Now we are in the heart of a pandemic crisis, and we start shaking and questioning the future. I think in reality, it's less and less predictable anyway. So I'm not sure it is changing a lot in this regard. I think we have to adapt to this new world, and I'm not sure, in fact, that the company needs to change its strategy in front of such an unpredictable future if its strategy is setting a clear overarching goal, and if it provides the right guidance. So this is a what, and then the right guidance on how to implement it. And obviously you need to understand what's going on. What are the main trends in the background, in the societies, in the world, and how are the markets reacting? What is competition doing? What are people needs, and so on. You must be right on that, more or less. That's for sure. That makes a good strategy. But then if you start building strategies where you're going to deep dive into each and every details, guys, that's how you're going to implement it, do this and do that, I think that can become a problem. You're right, because I think that a good strategy remains a good strategy, but how you implement it requires a very high level of speed and agility and flexibility. And I think this is in fact what has changed. I think the attribute of a solid strategy today is to ensure that the organization is flexible and has the capability to find its way. I would not say by itself, but it is almost like this. It is almost like this. I think that if you try to wrap up too many things into a strategy, including clear processes, guidelines, do it like this, do it like that, yes, you can be surprised if something unpredicted is happening. And then what do? You go for a new strategy. It's very funny because in many big corporate strategies are made for an average of 8 to 10 years. So my company in 10 years, we will be there. And in general, after 5 years, we start working on the new strategy, which is already showing something. Perhaps the older strategy is already obsolete. And that's, I think, probably symptomatic of what is happening there. But I mean, if I try to link this a little to what we are living in my company today, the fundamentals of our strategy, our global strategy, and then the breakdown into strategy by divisions, industries, and so on. It's not changing now because we have a corona crisis, but there are many things at the operational level, operative level, which are super important. They are not strategic, but they are as important as the strategy itself. And by the way, we are now already working hard on developing a BASF vision for future mobile work. Now we want to really gather all of the learnings we have from the crisis and come up with a concept which is going to put all of our people into a more comfortable situation to confront with this new normal. It starts with that, obviously, in terms of adaptation. But beyond this, we have totally switched our mode of interaction to digital and virtual. I've been in a negotiation with customers for big deals completely virtually, and sometimes it's about high-tech products, high-tech solutions, and you really, I mean, it's not given that you do it in 3-4 hours in a video conference, but in fact, it's working. We have organized customer events. I mentioned one we organized recently for Middle East and Africa, and we had nearly 1,000 participants from customer companies, which is totally huge. And if you can figure out, it was like you go to a commercial fair. There is an auditorium, and you can hear keynotes from invited or internal speakers, but you also have booths where the different business units of our company are there, and it's nutrition, and it's personal care, and it's paints and coatings, and it's mining products, and whatever you want. And if you are a customer, you click, you visit, you meet someone virtually, you receive documents, you can negotiate, you can agree on a trial, you can do whatever you want. And by the way, interestingly, we got quite a lot of business potential out of this virtual event, meaning this is something, if you told me 1 year ago, Laurent, now you're going to have a virtual event with 1,000 customers, and they're going to visit your booth, and they're going to learn about your product and eventually place orders. I'm not sure I would have believed you. So that's pretty impressive. We have made trainings for customers. How do you formulate our products so that you have a safer use of your products and also a better performance? We have been intensifying employees training. And the funny thing is we have been doing online trainings for employees for a very long time already. But the level of participation of employees in online trainings, sales trainings or whatever, is higher than before, which is also, I think, reflecting something interesting. We're obviously pushing e-commerce, all possible ways to intensify also the interaction with our customers. And something I think very important. I think it's a good illustration of what I mean before. We stay on the same track with regards to our strategy because we think it's a good one. And we believe we understood the environment we are living in and what we need to do to be successful. But at a more operational level, pandemic crisis comes. If you remember, in the first weeks, and it was more than a month, the impact on the supply chain was huge. And suddenly, for those of our customers who were still in a position to operate, there were a lot of shutdowns of factories and so on, but many customers were still operating. And the problem is they were not getting their product delivered. And that's what we call the game changer. And we realize, I think in that kind of situation, you have to identify what is the next game changer. And in a normal situation where supply chain is perfectly organized and things are okay, then it's not really the highest point on your radar screen. But in this case, we suddenly realize if we improve our performance in supply chain, that's the right thing to do for the business, for keeping our customers alive and working. And that's where we put all of our efforts, looking for new routes, logistic routes, adapting our management of inventories and so on. And I think it's not too bold to say, I believe we have gained market share this year. Only or mainly because first we were able to maintain the interaction with customers, and also because we realized there is one thing you've got to do in these times where the supply chain is completely destructured, that's to put it back working and to make sure that customers get their product. And so I think that's where this ability to understand what's going on, to identify where are the hot points and the priorities, and then implement quickly. That's what is supporting your strategy. Your strategy is in fact not changing in this case. If your strategy has been developed as a rigid frame for everything, then you may be very much challenged because you cannot adapt to new situations rapidly.
Yeah, the two things that you mentioned is very interesting and important, I think, for me. One is the supply chain issue. The other one is the that thousands of customers and interacting with the customers online. So starting with the customers, as an ex-salesperson, do you think it is easy to convince customers from online? Because all traditional sales people believe to visit personally to the customer to make deal. So the importance of the visits are the key issue, etc. So what do you think that the impact of salespersons are less or changed? What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. It's not easy at all. It's not easy at all to switch from a usual mode of negotiation, which is based on the relationship with the customer, which you build over time and visiting regularly and having interaction. And then suddenly you are in this cold world of having a screen, and you may know the person who is sitting in front of you on the screen, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that are missing. That's for sure. So we have to relearn, in fact, how to discuss, negotiate, gain the trust of someone in these conditions, and that's a pretty difficult exercise. We often say that if it's about communication, 50% is what you say, 50% is the rest, which in a meeting room where we sit together is very much the body language, the small things that you do not even capture when you are on a screen. And all this we have to substitute with something else. And that's typically the new skills that in fact people have to absorb pretty quickly. It's not easy at all. You are right, and so that's I mentioned also before, even for internal meetings, we must speak, and we must even build the agenda in a different manner in order to adapt to this. And yeah, that's right. That's a challenge. I think it's working well so far, but yeah, we will have to continue on this path and really be aware. We always have to take care for it.
Yes. What do you think about the stuff that you cannot manage online? That you're in the chemistry area, so sometimes you need to visit customers in any way, etc. So can't you hear me? Can you hear me?
It's better, yeah. It's better now
Okay,
because I think the connection was fluctuating a little. And so if you keep the mic closer to you, I'm sorry, that's much better for me.
I'm holding it like that. Okay. What I'm asking is,
sorry.
No problem, no problem. So the thing is, do you think that on the operational level, any functions or anything that we cannot manage online sustainably?
We're going to see, because the crisis is not over, and even if the crisis is getting less constraining than it is today, I think we already have one foot into a new way of doing things, and it will stay. But I think that, as you said, and especially in the countries where I'm working in my region, having the relationship with people is so important that this at one point in time will be needed again. And we all know that it has to happen. Sometimes we meet with the customers, and the business discussion is only a part of it, because we also speak about other things, and we get acquainted to each other and familiar to each other and building trust. And this, I'm also wondering, after several months, 1 year, 2 years, who knows, in these conditions, whether we are going to find a way to keep it. Because at the end of the day, human beings need interaction. So that's true. We will have to find ways. That will be very difficult to replace. And by the way, what we are really systematically doing is also to organize, beside the business calls between us, we are also deliberately organizing also happy hours or things like that, where we just connect to be together as a team, and to speak about personal matters, private life, hobbies, whatever, just to keep this link, this personal link also with people. I think it's a part of it. And I have to say, when the crisis began, one of my first recommendations to all of the management team, guys, you will have to speak more than ever to your colleagues, to your teams, more than ever, because things you do naturally in the office are not existing anymore. So you have to call, you have to connect. Is it doing okay, and so on. So we have to invest into keeping the emotional and affective part of the relation.
You're right. Now, when we come to the connection between the strategies and the processes, are also important. As you mentioned, that you don't need to change your strategies, but on the operational level, you're doing something different. So let's talk about processes a bit in details. As I understand, thanks to your process management, you can adapt easily to the new era. So what do you think about the importance of the processes during this period, first of all?
Well, I think perhaps if you don't mind, I start from the topic of strategy that we are coming from. And we always say, strategy comes first and structure and processes follow. And I think that's very true, because first of all, you need to understand what you've got to do before you define the structure and the processes that you need to accomplish it. But in fact, time is passing by, and we have to admit, sometime the organization becomes a little, I would not say fossilized, it would be too much, but the organization is the organization. And the priorities out of the strategy may change, or the requirement of the market, but the organization remains. And I think for this reason, it is very healthy that from time to time, we start challenging ourselves a little, and we go into the processes, which is, for me, how do we do things? And it's fascinating. It's also especially fascinating in a very big organization, because we have a high level of complexity. And what we often realize is that we end not asking us any more very simple questions like, why are we exactly doing that? What is the sense of it? What is the purpose of it? Because with time passing by and our constant wish to do better, to be efficient, we end sometimes feeding the process, with more steps, with more sub processes and so on. And efficiency may require it during a period of time, but I think the time comes also where you have to ask ourselves, let's sit down and check again, what is the sense behind the things we are doing, and wouldn't it be more clever to do it in another way? I think it is a very important exercise, but I think it is also typically the exercise that creates a lot of resistance in the organization. I mean, it's very difficult for employees sometimes to understand why things have to change. Now I've got used to my job, to my tasks, and why are they now shaking the tree? And why should I change? And I believe this often comes from the fact, which in fact is pretty amazing, that very often people lose the awareness of their exact role in the societies, in the companies. And for instance, under the holy god of efficiency, we tend to build processes where each one is going to work this part of the process, someone else is doing what is before, and someone else is doing what's after. And after a while, people lose the sight of the whole process. So we start working more mechanically. And at the end, we don't even remember eventually why we are doing that and who is at the end of the process, who generally is the customer. But it's sometimes not very easy to keep that in mind. And so for this, you are really to be back to very fundamental, very simple questions. I think one discussion which is interesting and which is taking place at the moment in our organization is we came from one structure which was, I have to say, working well and very efficient, but which was fundamentally based on areas of competencies and very high competencies by functions. And you are specialist of this, specialist of that, etc. And all of them, obviously, as they are building their skills and they are elaborating their processes, they start at a moment to lose a little from sight what's exactly my role and what I am working for. And you may end finally with difficult relations between different units. I mean, very classically, finance, everything that has to do with money is mine. Sales, well, sorry, the customer's payment is mine. No, that's mine. And typical kinds of, you start realizing that goals are diverging a little. And what we are working on at the moment is to try to think not into functions and center of competencies, if I may say, but more into processes and very much customer oriented, and asking us the question at each step of the process. It starts here. We go through this and this and that. And at the end of the day, the customer must be happy. What does it require? And you will realize that you don't need huge silos of functional services, but you need people working together, being totally aware of all of the process from A to Z and having the same goal. And I think with that, you can really start putting together processes into a much better way. I think that's an exercise that companies have to really go through on a regular basis. Obviously, times of crisis are a good stimulus to do that. And it is super important because typically in a company, if you start having noise in the system, as we say, inefficiencies, they are very difficult to detect. And that's where growth or profitability are leaking, but sometimes you are not even aware of it. Obviously, another important aspect is the motivation of people. And if people understand what is their role in the company, and I have to say, everyone is important. It's not, I'm this department, we are the kings, or etc. That's really very, very toxic for a company. Everyone has a role to play. And I think it's a big duty for the leaders to make people understand we count on you. Everyone brings a stone to the monument. and we have to work together, and we have to build the same monument, and we have to have the same target also.
Yes, that's the good point, because when we're talking about motivation, we're talking about leadership, and when we're talking about leadership, I just want to say that you are one of the role models for us, for NMT, to share our to share our customers about how to be a good leader. But I just want to ask you that. You're welcome. But that's the reality. But I just want to say, ask that what is the important aspects of being a good leader from your perspective, of course?
I think it is super important. And when I relate, it's more than important. It's really essential. When I relate to the previous conversation and the previous question, and I start from there, I think the dream corporate organization in the past was like this. So it's a pyramid. So there is a boss here, or there's a board, or whatever you want, and then you go down cascading in the organization with the different layers and etc. And I think today, more optimal organization, more successful organization are in fact organization where the connectedness between all of the players with different skills is more important. So you come at the end with something. There is always a pyramid at the end of the day, but something which is flatter, and also something which is much more interconnected, and where people can exchange know-how, experience, and they can team up to fix problems and so on, which is already starting to draft a little, what is a picture, I think, of what we have to try to achieve, at least as good leaders. So we owe a lot to our employees, to make them understand that they are important, that everybody has a role to play, and that everybody should pull in the same direction. That's, I think, a prerequisite which is very clear. Apart from that, for me, the first role of a leader is to manage change. To drive the train if everything is constant and the rails are here, and that's not a big leadership challenge. But in reality, we cannot do that. We have to change all the time, and change, external, internal, is creating fear. It's creating uncertainty, and you have to take that under control, and you have to really be ready to embrace change, and even more importantly, you have to be ready to get your people on board with this change, which has a lot of ramifications on talent management and leadership style and whatever. But I think that the duty we have is to, I mentioned the what and the how before, the duty we have is to spend a lot of time on the why. And I think that perhaps there were times long ago in the past, hopefully, where we may have been thinking, well, this is a decision from above, and you just have to go for it and apply it. And that's always possible. I think that's not working so well. I think people need to understand why we are doing certain things. What is the sense of it? Is it credible? Which takes a lot of transparency, and which takes a lot of efforts, because you need to repeat, you need to create a lot of different opportunities for dialogues, and you need to go to people, in fact. And so I would tend to say that perhaps a leader who spends 80 or 90% of his time crunching numbers, working on elaborated concepts, and so on, I'm not always very sure that this is the right focus, and perhaps spending much more, and it's a double-digit percent, to going to the people, explaining why, supporting in the how, and so on. And also, very importantly, listening. I think that's more of the leadership we need. Listening is incredibly important, because as soon as you are in a leadership position, the risk is the disconnect with the reality of the front line, of the market, of the customers, of what your people are doing. You see it in the political world. I'm French, I can comment on France. You have the elite. I've no doubt they are super clever, but sometimes, people say they have lost the contact with the population. They have the disconnect. They don't understand really where the problems are, we are all at risk of that. We have to be very careful and very humble. As soon as you have leadership responsibility, go back to your people and listen. And I have to honestly say, every week I learn something from listening to my colleagues in all parts of the organization. I think that something I would take for very important would be, as we said before, you need to react quickly. You need to understand what is burning at the moment, what is going to make a difference. Is it supply chain? Is it whatever could be, and move on it. If you want to move on it quickly, you may consider that having 70 or 80% of the storyline and the evaluation of the situation is enough, and go for it. Take action intelligently, perhaps small scale, try a pilot or two and see if it works. And if it does not work, change something and accept that it could fail. So we have to accept failure. In the other way, we can also say, I will start moving when I'm 95% or 100% sure that this is the right decision. But then when you are ready, after months of analysis, the train is gone. So all of this supposes that you are ready to accept that it fails in the first, but you have to try and see how it's turning. So I think it's very important. I think that, in fact, something that is coming to my mind when we look at these last months of pandemic crisis is empowerment is super important. And that's a nice word. Everybody is using it in all corporates and so on. It's difficult to make it real. But we also realize so these farm markets, far away from the headquarters, they are, by the way, very different. And you don't do, as I like to say, you don't do business in Nigeria like you do in Germany. That's another game. And I think that, okay, I have no chance to travel there this year. And we have to manage our time with digital calls and virtual meetings and so on. Perhaps, in fact, I should hand over a little more to the local team, and perhaps they know very well how to do. And so I think this empowerment, it's a very important dimension of it that relates a little to our discussion on leadership. And I think that my opinion, the bossy manager of the old times, the boss, do that. I think it does not work anymore. And so that's also something we need to really integrate. I think if we think about leadership. And finally, we've got to have all our antennas permanently deployed. And if I was looking around me in these months of pandemic, there are also a lot of things I captured in my own life and in the life of colleagues around. And for instance, and gender diversity in all topics, but gender diversity, that's a pretty important one for us. Yes. And something very interesting happened. I was at home and I was finally sharing the working conditions of most of the women working with me in the company, who also have children, and they also have a home. And in fact, they do most of the job at home, and the husband is working and perhaps not giving that much to home work at home and so on. And I think many of us as males have realized, gosh, multitasking is not easy, managing a house is not easy, and you still have to deliver on the job. And I think if we are honest with ourselves, there's a lot to think about in terms of through this crisis, can we leverage also a more gender diversity? We are pushing at the moment in the company a project which is a work-family integration, which is exactly caring for that. How can we better, in fact, manage work-life balance? And I think in this area, this is really, we can really learn a lot. I've been realizing also, if we start talking about the human resources, there is a mega topic. This is the pyramid of age and the next generation. And I realize that the evolution we are having now in our company is in fact making us probably a more attractive brand for the young generations, because now we go for, you are free to organize your work as long as you deliver. And you want to make it by phone, you want to make it from Morocco, and the meeting is in Ludwigshafen, Germany, no problem, stay in Morocco, do your meeting. And so I have 3 children, as they are between 25 and 32 years old. And I tell you, if I explain to them my career, they find it horribly boring. But if I tell them, that's what the companies try to develop, now they start being more excited. So I think, in fact, there are a lot of things, and you try to capture them in the air and understand what's going on, and try to then, coming from there, anticipate and do the right things as quick as possible.
Okay. Now, I was not in NMT, but I know that you worked with NMT.
Yes.
How do you remember those times, and what is the impact of working with NMT when you're looking from now to the back?
I mean, I remember very well the project we had together, and it was exactly about, so it was a recently acquired company. You have to integrate it into a big multinational company. And it's a very interesting challenge, because on one hand, there are things you need to harmonize. On the other hand, if you are a good buyer, you will try to understand what you have to keep in the small company. Why did you buy it? You bought it because it was a strength. There was something good in it. And then you have to maintain it while integrating. It's always a very, very difficult exercise. We came from there, and we started analyzing, in fact, all of the processes inside the company, all of the interactions. I remember that, no surprise, it was a shock for many employees, and it created a lot of resistance. And we had a lot of team coaching sessions, individual coaching sessions, to try to help everyone to get there. And I remember, I must say that at the end of the day, it has been very successful, and it was a very rich experience. I must say that it was very, very, very valuable. And it was also very interesting for me, because it was my first delegation abroad. I was coming from France, fresh and ignorant. And suddenly it was in Turkey already, and I had to manage a Turkish company. And also for myself, I've been learning a lot. So I think it was a very, very good experience.
That's good. Now I'm switching to the questions, because we have a couple of questions, if you mind. And then the
okay.
first,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, the first question is about the suggestions for new graduates to start their working life in big companies, because the question is something like this: what are your suggestions for success for new graduates who start their working life in big companies, where how things are done are mostly set in stone?
That's a super question. It relates to so many things we just discussed. If it's set in stone, you're in bad shape as a company. I had a great experience always, all my career, with trainees, because, and so now I've been in big jobs, if I may say, for all of the last years, and the general managers, etc. And I always requested to meet with the trainees in the company where I was working, which obviously was surprising for a lot of people. And but what I also acknowledged was that, so we were placing them in one department. We were trying to give them an experience of all of the different activities of the company. And I have to say, I was always amazed with which freshness and creativity they were coming, and how much they could help us. So the message for me is really, if I'm a trainee and I go for a first internship in a big company, be authentic. Don't start saying, well, I have to wear my tie every morning. I have to say yes, sir, to the boss, and I have to understand how they do and stick to it. I think, at the contrary, feel free to come with your own ideas, with how you look at the world, because the world belongs to you, not to me anymore. And we really need that. And I think we value a lot that we can have that kind of approach and mindset for our graduates and trainees. We have a lot of graduate programs. I just have in mind one in Africa, in most of African countries where we are active, closely interacting with universities and offering opportunities for graduates. It is super important. This is a fresh blood in the company.
Great. So another question is about leadership. As you mentioned, people have been at great difficulty due to pandemic conditions, and it is clear that leadership become more and more important. How can you be sure that your employees are led well enough in your company, and through which mechanisms and measurements?
You are never sure. There are a lot of ways to measure employee engagement. And there are a lot of very good sources, very good stuff. There is really a lot of work done on this topic, and that's really a topic of high interest for me. And the conclusion is that in most companies, the level of employees' engagement is not outstanding. It must not be catastrophic, but it's in reality not outstanding. And it's always very difficult, in fact, to get a clear picture of what employees exactly think. What we do is on a regular basis interviewing our employees. So we call it the global employee survey in the past, and now we have employee voices, which I think has been also improved. Not a perfect tool, because technically that's not easy. Is it exactly the right question? Can there be different interpretations? And then in the answer, what are people exactly meaning? So the follow-up of the results of the employee survey is super important. But at the end of the day, if there is not a climate of trust in the company, or if there is not on the employee side the hope that something could change if they address issues, then you can make as many employee surveys as you want, and it will never change. At the end of the day, that's frustrating, but that's everything related to human beings. Nothing is perfect. You can never be sure that your employees are totally satisfied. But the more you speak to them, and the more they realize that you are humble and open, and the more you can advance on this way.
Last two questions, and one is about the expos, and they become, becoming online. And the question is, in short, in your company, what is your plan about online events? I think you mentioned about a little bit, but when it comes to the customer engagement, you think you're going to continue to facilitate such events?
For the moment, we have to, but we also want to continue because the trials we made were very successful. It took a lot of work for the teams who have been preparing that, so that people can really see something happening. I think the feedback of customers after these events was super positive, and I'm sure we can further improve on these events, and we will also continue to do that. I think that obviously, and we mentioned it before on another topic, we also need meat. And there is something happening if we are all in the same room, and this will never be totally replaced. But yes, digital events with customers, we definitely want to continue. We have an innovation center here in Istanbul near Turkey, and we are even starting to do technical development sessions where there is a guy in the lab, and there is the other guy in his lab or her lab at the customer company, and they are doing chemical experiences. I mean, you can go very far into that, and there is also a part of fun into it. So definitely, we want to continue to organize virtual events with customers and to always improve.
And the final question is about the pandemic challenges. As we know that COVID may many impacts on business, but do you think pandemic created business opportunities?
Yes, I think a pandemic also created business opportunities. And then it depends on your portfolio. But for instance, in our company with a strong portfolio in disinfectant products, obviously this business has been doing very well. Our pharma business is not impacted at all. Nutrition business is doing very well. Sectors like agriculture, for instance, are not really depending on these factors. So I think definitely it has been creating new business opportunities, although it was all in all a very difficult time. And sometimes you must help yourself also getting opportunities. And also in direct relation to the pandemic crisis, I can say that, so first of all, we were lucky due to our portfolios that many of our factories were considered by governmental authorities in many countries as what we call critical infrastructure or critical industry, meaning you need them to better fight in the crisis. Typically, wherever we are producing detergents or disinfectants. In fact, we obviously get the approval to continue to run the factory. But then in some countries, authorities are very rightly and wisely introduced new quality referential, meaning if you want to continue your activity on site, show us that you protect the health of your employees, of the contractors working on site, or of the people, the suppliers delivering on your site. And they have created audits to also qualify your site. And if you are not qualified, you may shut down your site and stop. It's some effort to do, but we jumped on it. You know, that's one of these small game changers I mentioned before. And now all the sites we need, they are qualified for working under pandemic times, ensuring that the health of our employees and all the colleagues working there is well protected. And that's kind of opportunity, because if one another company just look at it saying, wow, gosh, I'm going to have another audit, I have to spend money to show that I'm caring for the health of my employees, I don't do it. We will win business, they will lose business. I think I like it, I must say. I think it's fair. That's also kind of opportunities that are coming up and that you can size.
Well, I think we spent almost 1 hour, and after your very busy and business day, I think we should stop here, and I should say thank you very much for your time. I hope we can find another opportunities to host you in other chats. Thank you very much for you and for all the attendees. Thank you.
I thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me. I was really very, very proud to be there with you tonight. A big thanks to the people who attended also. A big thanks to you, Murat, and to Didem of NMT. I did appreciate. That was really, really very nice. A nice evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Better than watching a movie on TV.
Okay. See you then. Thank you very much for all of you.
Bye bye.
İyi geceler, iyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar.